Hello and welcome to Good Games Well Played, episode 191. I'm Clint, aka JCM. With us this week is Isli.
Yo.
And Messiah.
Hello.
And we talked about last week how Sony had announced that, hey, there's an Until Dawn movie in the works, which we kind of, I feel like had been kind of percolating in the background for a long time. And, immediately after that announcement, there was a featurette on YouTube from the director talking about it with footage. And then the next day, there was a teaser trailer for the movie. I'm like, God damn, talk about Fallout 4, it comes out in 6 months. Hey, we're making a movie. Here's the featurette. Here's a trailer. And it feels like it's got people split 50-50 of this has nothing to do with the game. And others this looks like it could actually be good because it's not trying to be one-to-one to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And even we speculated about it because they talked about, the idea of it being in a, well, we talked in Discord actually because the whole details of it didn't happen till later. But being just trapped in the hotel and going through different genres. I'm because that's the only way you can have people die and still have it be exciting, I guess. Because you're okay, how are the mystery is how are they going to die this time?
Yeah, I honestly thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, I don't need with the Fallout TV show is great because it's not retelling one of the things. It's the same story structure of, oh, my dad left the vault. I got to go find him. Standard Fallout situation. But it's it was just in the world with, factions that from the game, but it's a new story. It works. And Last of Us, because it's going pretty close one-to-one with the game, granted it has a couple extra episodes and scenes, what have you, it still works because they managed to actually execute it well. And I feel like when you try to just retell the story, it's okay, well, I know what's going to happen. So I kind of like the idea. It's it's a horror movie. Just do whatever. It's you just have to survive until dawn. I mean, you have to make it until dawn in the first game. Anyways, once it's dawn, you survive. It's over. Whoever's still left.
I'm actually surprised at people disagreeing that it has anything to do with the game, because I thought the concept of them having to revisit decisions they've made as the premise for the show, I was kind of wow, this is actually pretty fucking creative for how you capture Until Dawn in a game form, which, as I said before, I thought was well, it's basically just it's basically just your standard 80s tropes, and that's what the movie would be. And I kind of feel like they proved me wrong.
Yeah, I don't need, it's okay, we know, people are gonna die. Okay, these characters we don't care about, yada. I know the twists and this and that. It's so it won't be as fun to watch. It's just because it won't be crazy, death horror stuff. Not that I necessarily need that, but it's not going to go insane with it, with the gore. But I'm with this, it's yeah, it's that. Oh, I made a poor decision. I'm gonna reload my save because Asterion he disproved. I got to redo my choices. In the original Until Dawn, I'm sure people are oh no, I did something wrong. I got to go back and redo it. But this is hey, you messed up. But instead of being the same thing, it's something entirely it's a ghost, and now it's Wendigos, and now it's this. I think that's a pretty cool idea. It's in in the trailer. I don't know if you watched it, Isli.
I watched the trailer.
Yeah, I like that bit where it looks like it's a found footage movie where she has the bug in her cheek or something, and but the way it's filmed, it's very oh, this is a found footage horror. I like that. I'm oh, if they have a whole section that's that, that's really cool, because then it's that's the movie trope. It's a found footage horror movie, that section. I like that idea, and you could have tons of fun finding clever ways to have people die.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I actually thought the whole concept and mixing up how people die, and you said it wouldn't be gruesome, but I'm they could get gruesome if they wanted to. Yeah. It really plays well. You could go a lot of different directions with that. They actually came up with a pretty creative idea. So I'm surprised at people being oh, it's not that interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. It's we'll see. And it's always fun to see Peter Stormare. But yeah, it's we'll see how it goes. I think it's
Peter Stormare by itself is just going to be funny to watch.
Yeah, there's that show he did a couple years back called Swedish Dicks, because he was a detective. And I only watched the first episode of it. But I need to go back and watch that series. I don't know if it's on any streaming platforms, because I think Keanu Reeves also did a cameo in there as a hitman, which I thought was funny, because obviously he's in John Wick 2. But yeah, I'll be curious to see. I won't go and see it in theaters, but I'll definitely wait one of those oh, it's out on VOD, I'll watch it, because it's all they have to do is survive. It's not the story of, oh, I I want to know more about this house that's got them trapped there where they can't leave. It's like, I don't care. I just want to see some fun stuff, like them trying to solve how to make it out. And it seems like there's deadline. They have that ledger. It's like, oh, no one's made it past like what they say, like 11 days or something like that in the ledger. But anyways, well, it could be a fun watch. So I'm like a murder's row of like a murder Groundhog Day, I guess. It's like
which I guess is like Death Day.
Happy Death Day, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. which is also a really fun pair of movies. So yeah, it's like, those are great. This could be maybe not as, goofy because it seems to take itself a little more seriously, but could be fun. And then Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League officially ended this week. We talked about that coming to an end with their final update and getting an offline mode. But they also added a quote-unquote true ending, which I guess is only shown, the stories must be unveiled like through like comic books. There's no like actual cutscenes. And like I read through like the ending, and who knows if it was actually planned to be this way. That it's like, spoilers for anybody who cares, but like the whole thing was like, oh, Brainiac brainwashed the Justice League, and so you're trying to kill them. And like you kill Batman early on, like Harley Quinn does, and like early in the game, this and that. And then it turns out, oh, what happened was Batman's actually alive, and he allowed Brainiac to clone the Justice League and break from. So the people you're killing aren't actually the Justice League; it's clones of them. And it's like, okay, well, whatever. Standard comic book stuff. Yeah, but what have you?
Give them some level of like, decision making. Make it permanent or something. I always hate when they kind of find some like cop out like that.
Yeah. Then the PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games have been announced for January, including God of War Ragnarok, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. I'm trying to see some other games that were in here. Atlas Fallen, Reign of Sand. You know what? Because that was a game I was interested in because I like fun open world traversal, and that looked like it had fun open world traversal, like just skating on the sand essentially. I'm like, if that's free, because I forgot to reduce my PlayStation Plus subscription, so I'm still at Premium. I might have to check that out and play it, because I think everybody said like, oh, it's okay, like it's or it's good, like it's good, but nothing to write home about. But I might have to give it a try. But Sayonara Wild Hearts is also there. Orcs Must Die 3, Citizen Sleeper, Poker Club, Medieval 2. So yeah, I'm gonna have to check out that one game, see if it's fun. Atlas Fallen, Reign of Sand. Were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay. You're like, I was gonna. I just heard I was waiting, like he's taking the breath.
Honestly, what I was thinking about is I was like, which game was Atlas Fallen? And then I looked it up, and I'm like, oh man, that was the game that I was excited about that one. And then it got kind of like such average comments and reviews that I forgot it existed. So it was more of a like, damn, that game could have been something good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about because like it was new IP, and people always say, I want new IP, I want new IP. We don't get new IP anymore. It's like, well, you don't, because when things, they have to perform like extremely well, or else publishers are just canceling them. It's like closing studios, even if they are well reviewed. Like look at Prince of Persia. It's like that. It's a great game, but it clearly didn't sell enough for Ubi to be like, yep, we're gonna move this team over to other parts of the within the company. But
we want new IP. We want new IP. Well, then stop poo-pooing on the new IPs and let them.
I don't know. I'm torn on this argument though, because like the whole we want new IPs and then like don't shit on new IPs. Sometimes it is valid to have like critiques and comments for some of these new IPs, and when they're really repetitive or they just follow like a stereotypical formula, there is a part of me that's like, I'm glad you guys came up with a new IP, and like, you couldn't have put a tiny bit more thought into it or differentiated it in some way, or like people must realize by now that these are things that, these are things they have to take into consideration, or else they won't be well received.
Well, yeah, there's a big difference between like a new IP that's actually new and creative and builds on older ideas, and then there's a new IP that's just Genshin Impact, but different.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll do my homework, but don't make it look the same.
Right.
Yeah, or returning to a franchise like a Prince of Persia, where it's like it's a great game, but maybe not what fans of that franchise wanted, yada yada. But I think too, we talked before, like you can't have just like AA productions, like you can't have an Uncharted 1 or an Assassin's Creed 1 anymore. Like maybe Atlas Fallen 2 would have been like, okay, we improve upon everything we had in the first game, or Immortals of Avium. You can improve on everything you did in the first one, because typically there's that big stretch in that PS3 era. It's like the sequel was, it like was always a huge step forward for these franchises where they can build, try something new, see what worked, and it's like, okay, people like this about it, and maybe this we could have, tweaked or what have you. Our internal testing said it was a little more positive and whatnot, but let's improve upon it in the sequel. And you don't get that anymore. Like, you have to be number 2 good out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rough. It's, they're talking about like Sony, speaking of which, pivoting to another thing, but like Sony canceled 2 unannounced live service games. One of them being apparently a live service game for God of War by Bluepoint, which is so fucking weird. Like, why would you have Bluepoint do a God of War live service game?
And also, don't live service God of War. Kratos doesn't deserve that. Come on.
Well, that's hopefully why they canceled it,
Yeah. And then apparently Ben's studio was doing a live service game as well, but who knows what they were doing. But why would you have Bluepoint? Like, Bluepoint is have them do something new. And I hope that wasn't, like, because they were talking about, maybe they're working on new IP. It's like, if it was this, it can't be this, because you said new IP. So it's like, if it was this, it's just the same IP, but a live service game. And you've already done multiplayer in God of War that was just okay. So I don't know why you thought, like, if you scrap the Tlu factions, which is a much better entry point for that type of game, because I can see how it would exist in that Division style as a live service. And it'd be much more palatable because it makes sense with the factions you have in that world. God of War, I'm like, what the fuck are you going to do? But
the only thing I could see with God of War is if they went kind of the OG Niflheim route and it was like randomly generated kind of roguelite type of thing. But even then, it's like, okay, I guess you can live service that and you could set it in the God of War universe or whatever. But just, I don't know, just do something else with that model. It doesn't have to be God of War. It doesn't make any sense for that.
Yeah, and just have Bluepoint either do something that they want to do or just remake something. They're great at the remakes. Like, let them remake something. Demon Souls is awesome. Have them work on something else. Like, but
there's a lot of games that could be remade or that they could do that would be really nice.
Yeah, it's rough. Hopefully they were big enough to be where they can work on like 2 things at once. I mean, I don't know how big Bluepoint is, but especially if Sony's the one who's like, oh, we're going to cancel this. Like, and it's interesting that you would have them do it. Like, they're not known for live service games. So why would you have Bluepoint do it? That's what doesn't make any sense to me.
Because the name is becoming more and more recognizable with like good games or doing like faithful recreations and properly modernizing them. So if you stick that name onto a project, people are like, ooh, it's going to be so good. But little do they know that you stuck that name onto a project that they are completely unfamiliar with and probably will not do a very good job at.
Sure.
It'll look pretty and it'll probably be, fun for a little while, but I don't think Bluepoint has the desire to make a long live service type of game.
We'll see. I know Shuhei Yoshida, I think, was on Kind of Funny for his interviewing him because of his retirement, and he was talking about like, yeah, he probably would have pushed against live service if he was still in first party at the time, but obviously he wasn't. They moved him over to other business relations within the company prior to that. And he's like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that. But and he did also he offered some insight on why there isn't a Bloodborne remake, because that was also a question that was brought up, and his thoughts were like, maybe he thinks that Miyazaki, like, it's so close to him and he loves it so much that he wouldn't want anybody else to do it, that he'd want to do it, but he just doesn't have the time. And I was like, that would make sense. Like, if you really love, I mean, it is the most unique of the Souls IPs. That's very standalone. There's nothing else to it. And there's Sekiro. Sekiro's also unique. But I mean, at the time, it's like those initial 4 games or 5 games, it's like, this is the one that's different from all the other ones that are, that he done. So he's like, okay, I'll do it, but I need to find time to do it. So.
And I mean, honestly, that's probably the only way that I would accept a Bloodborne remake, is if Miyazaki was like, I want to have my little fingies in this at all times. And it's like, yes, please do that, because you did that in the first place and it made a fucking fantastic game. So if there's going to be a remake at any point, I want you to be involved and make sure that it's like a 1-to-1.
Yeah, I'm surprised he could just be like a product overseer if Bluepoint did it. Like, obviously he didn't oversee like Demon Souls, I'm sure they probably showed him stuff, or maybe he didn't. I think he said no. We talked about it. I think he said he didn't look at any of it, or he didn't play it at all because he wasn't interested in the remake. So I guess if they did a Bloodborne, like could he be the like EP for it and a project overseer, just like being like, hey, especially if it's 1-to-1, or he can be like, I always wish I could have tweaked this if I did a Bloodborne 2. Let's go ahead and change this small thing or something. I don't know, but
yeah, but even that requires a lot of time investment. Like if it's just the time that he would rather spend it on new things, like that's perfectly understandable. And if he doesn't have the time to properly oversee a project to the degree that he would want to, I mean, trust the guy. He obviously knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. It just bums me out because I'm like, man, Blue Point could have been working on something that would have been probably out because they've only released one thing since the PS5 launch. It's like all right. And moving on to the last thing, after lots of leaks over the past year, or especially the back end of last year, Nintendo officially announced the Switch 2. And it's everything people said it would be: bigger screen, bigger controllers. Look like they snap in with magnets versus sliding in, so that's nice. I'm curious how strong those magnets are, if it is magnetic.
The concerning thing I saw about that is it looks like the controllers are it looks like they have like a 1/2-inch pin thing that they have to slot into, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's getting, everyone is saying this, but like, yeah, that's going to break off. That's going to be the thing that dooms this console.
Yeah, well, especially if you give it to children and they just like are shaking it and snapping it around.
Yeah, because
those little connectors are gonna break.
Because it's very much like on the OG Switch, like they're just entirely independent. It just slides on and it's a holder. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, it looks like, okay, well, if you take them off, they have how like on the normal Switch controllers, you can put that little like sliding rail that has the wrist strap on it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but it's not necessarily protecting anything. It's just sliding on there, and there are buttons already on the underside of that bit. But now if it has this extra snap thing, it's like, okay, now it feels like you want to slide. If you take it off, you want to slide those, unless it's recessed enough in the shell of the controller, which it kind of looks like. I'd have to go back and rewatch that video, that maybe they won't snap. Like if you were to, drop it or misalign it on something, like maybe it could be starting up, but who knows, how that's going to be. But yeah,
to me like the actual like sticking out pin part was on the console, and then it's probably on the like controller holder thing that they're going to come out with, and then it's recessed in the actual like Joy-Con, so you won't have like the little extra piece that slots onto it. It's just going to be the controller itself.
Yeah, I want to go back and look at it. Yeah, because when they zoom in on it here,
I thought it was on the console too, which is why I feel like it's a little bit of a risky move.
Oh,
because
okay,
if it's on the Joy-Cons, then it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. If it's on the console, then maybe it is.
I'm looking at it now. It's on the console, but it is recessed into the console.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So the like colored part of the controller or the Joy-Con is going to slot into the console, so that when it's actually in the console, you're only going to see that little sliver of color. If that, it's going to be completely flush.
Yeah, I wonder though, because I'm like, okay, when you slide it on, it's very sturdy. They're still a little wobbly. But I'm like, if all you're doing is that, and if the blue and orange part of the controllers in the recess of the Switch are super snug, I feel like you're still going to have that wobble that the original Switch has. But the way they slap it in the trailer, that's what makes me think it's magnetic on the rim of the controllers, is because they slap it.
They said it was. They did say it was magnetic. Okay, there's also like, in addition to being magnetic, it seems like there's certainly some other thing at work there.
Yeah, and it was just kind of an overview. Like I said, it's exciting. Bigger screen, bigger controllers, which is nice because goddamn, those controllers are fucking small.
I'm the only one that's disappointed that it's bigger. I love my Switch. It's so portable. I carry the Switch Lite because it's like even more portable. It's bigger. I'm gonna need a bigger backpack.
Yeah, I'm like looking at the way they kind of have the one controller grow next to the other one. I'm like, it's not too much bigger. If I had to guess, I'd say that's maybe like 1/2 inch taller, and then not too much thicker. But I'm like, I'm so glad it's slightly bigger, at least.
I'm probably going to assume it's going to be around the same size. Maybe not this. Obviously not the same thickness, but probably the same size as a Steam Deck.
I didn't care that it was a little bit bigger. I do actually like the portability of the current Switch, especially because I use a special grip just because I find the Switch so uncomfortable to hold without a grip that my Switch is already freaking huge. So if this one is more comfortable that I don't need that, that's great.
Yeah, and I'm
I
sure
got
they'll.
teeny weeny hands though.
Yeah, I feel like it. Like I said, I feel like it doesn't look like it's gonna be too much bigger.
I have heard
No, it's just
children. I have heard children complain about how small the Switch
Zai's
is.
hands are
I
small.
like my Joy-Cons. I use
Yeah.
them all the time. I play almost exclusively in handheld mode.
Yeah. Well, in
I took
handheld
the
mode,
case
it's
off
fine.
of my Switch Lite because it was too bulky.
That's funny. Like, I don't mind the controllers being small in handheld. It's whenever you have to use them in, like, oh, you're playing Mario Party, so you gotta take one off and turn it sideways. I'm like, fuck me, I hate this controller. Like, when it's on the Switch, I don't mind. It's not that bad. But because then my fingers can rest on the back and it's fully fine. I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, the nubs are at least bigger than, like, the PSP was. So that's fine. It's just whenever I have to take them off, I'm like, I hate using these like this. And people are thinking like, oh, maybe they can also be used as a mouse because they like glide around at that one point. But who knows what all that means. But yeah, I mean, they announced that they showed an unannounced Mario Kart game. People are assuming obviously it's going to be, maybe they'll just call it Mario Kart 9. There too many articles about Donkey Kong's redesign or whatever, so I don't just like, come on, man. Let's milk this announcement.
It's just going to be Mario Kart 8 with more DLC.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, they did. The one thing I did see looked interesting was the starting line had like, 24 starting positions. So it's like,
maybe
it'll be
a lot more characters on screen.
24 player online support or something like that. That'd be fun because you can do a lot of people on Mario Kart 8. But then my kid's like, he heard about it because I didn't tell him about it, and he was like, oh, if Super Mario Maker 3 is a Switch 2 exclusive, I really want. I'm like, dude, they didn't even announce Mario Maker 3, and like that would be so dumb. If they do that, I mean, I heard someone say the other day, it was okay. I have to look it up just because I need to see that. Launch window.
I mean, as soon as they announced it, I was like, okay, there's going to be a Zelda game. The Metroid game's going to be on it. There's got to be a new Animal Crossing at some point. We got it on the Switch. It's going to be on the Switch too. And also, it's just going to run better on the Switch too. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy it.
I mean, obviously, those are all going to exist on it.
Yeah. Someone was saying, I was watching a video, and they're like, oh, the Nintendo Switch had one of the best launch lineups. And I'm like, what?
It did not.
It did not. I'm like, also, its main title came out on the previous gen. Like the same thing people gave flack to Sony for the PS5. Like, oh, a lot of these are available on the PlayStation 4 with like Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's like
it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the exact same thing for Switch.
Yeah, it's just
the thing is, the Switch 2 plays all of the Switch games, so you can't.
Yeah, there is an asterisk. Yeah, there's an asterisk there so who knows? There's like probably like I'd assume people are assuming like anything that uses the what's the cardboard cutout game or like anything you can slot Labo or anything you can slot the controllers into, like the fitness ring, like maybe because the controllers are too big, so they won't fit those rings anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't use it there. And I'd imagine they'd have to make a new ring for Ring Fit Adventure. So there's probably like some minor games that won't work, but. Yeah, it was so funny. I'm like, they're like, oh, it's the best lineup. I'm like, what are you talking about?
People have this weird Nintendo blindness. And
for sure.
It's like a collective Mandela effect type of thing where it's like people criticize. And then as soon as the new Nintendo thing comes out, suddenly Nintendo's the best company in the world and they can do no wrong and they're always ahead of the game. And it's just like, do you forget that 12 minutes ago you were complaining about Nintendo Online? Like, what do you...
I think the thing that drives me nuts about people commenting on Nintendo's lineups is that Nintendo isn't really that creative with their stuff or their lineups. And it's not like they have 5 games that come out every month that are all like the most amazing games in the world, right? It's like they get 1 or 2 every year or two. And that's kind of what Nintendo does. Now, those 1 or 2 everyone wants to play, but it's never anything wild.
And I mean, look at how many Mario games came out on the Wii U and the Switch before, Wonder came out and was like, did a lot of unique things. But it was still like the base formula, of course, because you can't mess with Mario too much because people will cry. But it's like they took the formula, added to it, and innovated in a fun way that made the game really good. I mean, it's the same with all of their games. Like, I mean, Breath of the Wild. People were like, "Oh, it's the best Zelda game in the world." No, it's a bad Zelda game, but it's a very, very good video game.
Yeah.
So I would really like the next Zelda game to be, 3D adventure, back to the old kind of style, that kind of thing. But like, I still love Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. They're good fucking games. And Tears of the Kingdom is like one of the most fun games I've played in a really long time. It's just freaking fun, but it's just got a Zelda skin on it, let's be honest.
Yeah,
But also, it's just like, that's what people are like, oh, it's the greatest game. Nintendo's so inventive. It's like, they could have just made this a game and it didn't have to have the Zelda skin, but somebody somewhere was worried that nobody was going to play it.
Right.
which is probably true.
Look how long it's taking Metroid to come out. Like, I mean, Dread came out and it was freaking fantastic because they went back to like what people love about Metroid, and then the new Prime's going to come out and it's probably going to be really good. But yeah, it's just like, these are the games. That's it. That's what Nintendo has.
Did you see that custom fluffy Chocobo Steam Deck that Square Enix made?
Bro, what?
I'll send you a link to the article. Let me find see if I can find a picture of it. Oh my god, it's okay. Square Enix.
The worst thing you could have possibly shared.
And it makes me think I'm going to have it.
Okay,
I'm laughing about it because I know that it's going to be something that you want.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if like there's videos or
Chocobo. What?
Oh my god, here, I'll put it in chat. Here's a YouTube video.
Show me.
Okay, here. I'll put it in the I'll just put it right here. But anyways, yeah. So there's that. I was looking. I forgot about that. I didn't note it in my list, and I forgot about it until I saw it again. But yeah, it's just it's like, if they having backwards compatibility means you won't have anything that's like, and people are speculating now, like, if a lot of the leaks that were there, like a lot of them were true, bigger screen, different controllers, potential mouse usage, like some of that, okay, but they're confirmed, and then the mouse thing's still questionable. But why do they have them slide like that on the desk? But then there's the other leaks about the hardware and what it could have, like with DLSS and this, that, and whatnot. So it's like, okay, that'll be wait. But they didn't announce a direct in April, so we'll get more information there, of course. But I'll be curious to see like how much more powerful it is, because obviously I wish I could see a list of like, well, I feel like they dropped Wii U support like super fast. So it's not like a lot of things that came out on Switch also released on the Wii U, I'd imagine, because they'd have to have the, controller support, which the Wii U doesn't have. So I feel like
the only thing that cross came out on Switch and Wii U was Breath of the Wild, and I mean obviously Mario Kart. But as far as like the draws,
what I'm getting at though is like, I'm curious, like if people's mindset for the Switch 2 will be like, if everything comes out, but it also releases on the Switch, export.switch2.switch or whatever. Like, it's like, okay, but it's just more powerful hardware. So it's like essentially a pro version of a console. Obviously they haven't announced these specs, so we don't know. But if it's like, okay, will people bemoan that? Because there's so many people that are like, oh, there's so many, like in that first couple of years for PS5 and Xbox, where it's like, oh, a lot of the games that are coming out on these consoles are also available on the last gen. It's like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. You're not going to get the same jump from PS2 to 3 or 1 to 2 anymore. So it's like, people can scale games.
One of the reasons, though, it has to be different for Switch is the Switch has gone longer than PlayStation and Microsoft without revamping their console. I know they had like the OLED version, which I don't really count, but they've gone longer, and the Switch has historically held consoles back more. Not necessarily a bad thing, just, it's always been the underdog in terms of power. So with the Switch 2, they finally have the opportunity to release something that is, significantly more powerful.
Than
the Switch, not than PlayStation or Microsoft, but they have something that they could release that's significantly more powerful than the Switch.
Yeah, and next month it'll be 8 years since the Switch launch, which is the longest, like the gap between consoles. But it's not like where was I going? Where you were going here? No, I lost it. I lost my train of thought. You were saying something. I was like, oh, I'm going to say this and this, and I
Switch being more powerful.
But the thing is, this is how Nintendo operates. They never make a pro version of their consoles. They always release a lightly upgraded or like quality of life upgrade to their console. And then when they announce the next console, it's always like, oh, you'll still be able to play some previous generation stuff on it, or like like with the 3DS. when that came out as like the new console, it's like, yes, you can still play your regular DS games. Obviously, they're not going to be in 3D, but you can still play them on the handheld. Same thing with like the Wii. You can play GameCube games on the Wii. Obviously, when the Wii U came out, you can't do that because it's a different disk drive. So it's like every generation kind of has a little bit of backwards until they like completely jump to a new proprietary ecosystem or whatever you want to call it. And it's just like, but then on the Wii U, you had like the shop where you could obviously go and buy Nintendo or Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games and stuff like that, and like old games and all that other stuff. But it's like when the original DS came out, you could play Game Boy Advance games on it.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's not like a backwards compatibility thing. It's like they literally just
virtual console.
Put the cartridge slot in the console.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I mean, it's that, but it's like Nintendo just doesn't make pro versions of their consoles. They always have a little bit of longevity to them, like as far as the generation goes. I mean, 3DS has like the 3DS XL, or they have the 2DS and stuff like that. So it's like that's all still part of the same generation, even though they're different types of consoles. They're just like quality of life adjustments to them and stuff like that. I mean, look at the Switch. They came out with the Animal Crossing edition. The only difference between that and the original is the battery is a little bit better. They have the Switch Lite, which is like a slightly more portable, child-friendly version, stuff like that. But there's no, other than the OLED, there's no like Switch Pro or anything like that. So it's, of course, it's going to be the Switch 2 with like a little bit of backwards compatibility. Actually, this time it's going to be all backwards compatibility. But
yeah, I just mean not even for backwards compatibility. I just mean for cross-gen games. Like, Microsoft and Sony really backpedaled that. There's no Xbox Series exclusives that weren't on Xbox One for a while. There's only a couple. And it's same for PS5. There's only a couple PS5 games that aren't available in PS4. But people bemoan that. It's like, oh, well, I could just play this here. It's like, yeah, but you're getting, again, going back to the jump in technology, you can't do a big jump anymore. So it's like you are paying, it's a GPU upgrade. You're paying for the better performance and fidelity. That's what you're paying for. And then whatever features come with the console that you might like and this and that. So it's like, but if they have the same thing with Switch, like if the Switch does that same model of, hey, we're doing this new Mario Kart, it's also available on the Switch because not everyone's going to migrate immediately to a Switch 2. It's like, it just, if you play it on the Switch, it plays well, just like Mario Kart 8. But if you play it on Switch 2, it's like, oh, that's the version that lets you maybe they split it up with like, you have more online folks or something. I don't know, like, which would be weird because then you can't do cross-gen multiplayer. But it's, whatever. It's like maybe it runs at 60 or it's that high, it outputs in the dock at a higher frame rate or higher resolution or something. It's like, okay, if that's all you're paying for, but people didn't like that and complained about it for this current generation of consoles. So will they have the same complaint going into the Switch 2 if that's the case, or will they give Nintendo a pass to be like, no, I just want slightly better?
Nah, like, Nintendo will get a pass.
Yeah,
there will be Nintendo will get the pass, and there will be the people that still complain about it, and there's going to be the people like me that's going to buy the new console and be like, look, my Animal Crossing Island doesn't run at 5 frames a second anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
When the trees blow. It's just like, oh, it's so pretty and wonderful. Look at Tears of the Kingdom. It runs so well and stuff like that. It's just like, yes, you're paying for essentially a pro version of the previous console is what this is. But there is going to be a point later on down the life where Switch 2 games are not going to be able to be played on the Switch.
Yeah, and I'm really curious what that is. Like, obviously it makes sense for why games on the Switch, they drop support for the Wii U, but like if it's the same architecture and stuff, like when will they drop it? Like what will their Returnal be? What will their, will they have a remake that can only be played on, like a Demon's Souls remake that can only be played on Switch 2? Like what's that game going to be? That's like, oh, this, like, I don't know. Like I'm really, especially for Nintendo, it's like and the thing I was thinking about Isli too is the era of third party being on multiple things. Like it's kind of gone. Like, yeah, we got Doom and some other things on the Switch, like No Man's Sky's on there. But it's like back in the day for Nintendo consoles, it used to be like, oh, there's Call of Duty. Okay, we have a Call of Duty on the same game on the Switch, but it's like demonstrably worse. Like there were so many times where like you go to play, even now when they put games on the Switch that were on for an Xbox One, it's like they would be, oh my God, look at the performance of this. And then there were some that like, because Digital Foundry would do the videos, they're like, wow, they managed to really pull it off with this game. Or they do that thing where like you can do it, but it's only through cloud. You can't do it like
Like with Dying
on.
Light.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, will there be more third-party titles coming to Switch 2 because they've upped their stuff? But does that mean, because the rumors are that the NVIDIA architecture using is kind of like a 30 series GPU, but more like a mobile version of it, which is what's in my laptop. So I'm like, okay, but does that mean that when people are developing, they're like, all right, we got to do like a more PS4 era style restrictions while we're doing when PS6 and Xbox, whatever comes out. It's like, it's like, I'm curious what that'll look like from a dev cycle if developers go back to that. We're going to release on all 3 platforms, not just Xbox, Sony, and PC. Like, if their game scales, then they can do it. But if they have issues, and it's like, I guess if they have to release on Xbox One, because who knows, Microsoft probably has it has to work on the S. So I guess you have at least the S they have to go down to.
I think they're going to start releasing on Switch more. I feel like they will do third-party games on Switch.
I guess it depends on like dev costs, because now it's like you spent a generation not doing it, and now it's like, okay, we want to add it back. But how well did because I think historically third-party games on the Switch did not do well as first-party games on the Switch for obvious reasons, because they're first-party. That's why you buy a Nintendo console, for their first-party stuff, or second-party. You're not buying it so you can play Call of Duty and Madden and baseball. You know what I mean? You play Mario versions of those things, but you're not going to play, the actual licensed versions.
Wait, so Mario Strikers is rad.
Yeah, but I'm you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, okay, it comes out like it'll be the same thing like it's been for a while. You'll have a Nintendo console and another console or a PC, and it'll be just like you get the exclusives, just like when people do Xbox and PlayStation. They play their main games on one, exclusives on the other. So it's like, is it worth it for game devs to release across now a 4th platform if they're already doing PC, Xbox, and PlayStation when they've spent a whole generation not doing that for Nintendo? So, but
I mean, I guess it depends on the studio. Like if there's a desire for it, or if they think that their game could lend well to a portable experience or a handheld experience, because I know there are a lot of people who only play their Switch in docked mode as like a home console kind of thing, but the main draw of the Switch is portability.
Yeah.
Take it up out of the dock and take your video game with you. So if there's, I do see a potential of a Call of Duty being put on the Switch for, Battle Royale. I mean, Fortnite is on it. Warframe is on it. Like games like that, I would fucking love if Star Rail was on it, because then I only have to carry one console to work and I don't have to play on my teeny weeny phone. But I mean, it's stuff like that you have to weigh too. Like, is it worth doing if it's not going to translate to a good handheld experience? Like, are you going to port your game to the Switch and have people complain that they can't use their Switch like as a Switch or as a portable console kind of thing, because it's just like the game doesn't allow for that type of thing? Or I mean, the way that third-party games kind of work on the Switch now, and the way that I personally use it, is like if there's a game on Steam that I'm really, really interested in and I see that there is going to be a Switch version, I might just go ahead and buy the Switch version because I don't have a Steam Deck. So I want to have the portability for that game. A lot of like more casual, chill type of games, like the life sim type of games that I like in particular, like, yeah, they may not run the best, but I'm not really worried about the performance of, Harvest Moon or what the hell ever kind of thing. So it's like, yes, there are a lot of games that I particularly am interested in that are on Steam that I would rather get on Switch to have that portability. And then I don't have to buy a Steam Deck because I have the Switch version. So it's like, yes, I can sit here and play it at my desk, or I can play it on the TV, or I can play it in bed. That's what I'm looking for with a Switch port of a game. Or like games that are just on the Switch, like JRPGs. JRPGs are like the cream of the crop when it comes to Switch ports, because you can take it with you. You don't have to sit at your computer for 500 hours or sit on your couch on the PlayStation for 500 hours.
I will say something that I think is going to be interesting because of all of this for me is like I've started playing a lot of the games that don't run as well on PlayStation Portal if I'm throughout my house. So now the Switch 2, the only thing it really is going to be used for is if I actually am traveling, which definitely, still beneficial, but the whole like powerful handheld console that I can use throughout my house elsewhere than like sitting in front of the TV has now been replaced by the Portal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I mean, there are things that I think about getting either a Steam Deck or a Portal all the time. Mostly like the Steam Deck because it can obviously go beyond my home, my very teeny tiny home. But it's like, okay, well, if I get that, I already have all of these other things. Like I have my tablet that I game on a lot, and it runs basically what I would be playing on the computer. Is Star Rail pretty much. The only thing it won't run is, well, actually, I haven't on my new one. I haven't tried to play Zenless Zone Zero yet, but it's like that's the kind of stuff on the PlayStation that I would probably be using the Portal for. It's like I can either parsec into my computer through my tablet and play whatever's on my computer, or I just play it on the Switch.
Yeah.
So
I wonder too, like if because it's funny because you're talking about the Steam Deck, like that Pets poured everything to Switch that people always said like throughout last gen, where it's like, oh, this is a great game. I wish it was on the Switch. I wish it was on the Switch. It was like not. It's like the Steam Deck is really fixing that issue. It's like, oh, I hear so much like this game I've been playing. I started playing it again on the Steam Deck, and it's so much better. Like for my situation to play it there. It's like that's kind of what that is now. But I wonder too, like how much of it comes down to, okay, if people, smaller studios or smaller third party companies who aren't doing PC and only do consoles, really like release on Xbox or PlayStation first and the other console later. It's like they both have the same GPU architecture with AMD, but so it's like, okay, do they have any experience with NVIDIA GPUs, which is what they'd have to do for the Switch? And it's like that's where, I mean, that's the PC master race bemoan about the fact that it's like, okay, you have to make a game where it fits on every possible GPU from every manufacturer. Now you got Intel Arc. It's like it's got to run on everything. So it's like, making sure that all works and testing all that stuff. It's like, oh, it works great on my AMD, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I'm having issues with my NVIDIA 2060 or what have you. So it's like, how quickly will they be able to adapt these smaller third parties to be like, okay, we want it on the Switch too, but we have to worry about that NVIDIA stuff. Like I'm curious what that would be like for them. I'm sure Nintendo's going to have some sort of way to help them teach people like, hey, here's what you got, here's an easy way to do it, this and that, yada yada, and some tools for them to help them transition. But
Nintendo does lean pretty heavily into indie games now. I mean, they have a whole Nintendo Direct that's just based on indie games that are going to be ported to the Switch or that are coming out exclusively on Switch and stuff like that. So they do have some kind of support system for independent developers and publishers and stuff like that. So there is that. But I mean, there are a lot of very, very small single or two-person studios that only release on PC and then later they'll port it to the Switch. I mean, like Ooblets did that. It was what, like a 3 or 4 person team or something like that made that, and it was in early access forever. And then when the 1.0 came out, they transferred that to the Switch and played that on the Switch. But that's a very like not graphically intensive game necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's like it ran fine on the Switch. Obviously, it runs better on PC. But yeah, I think it has a lot to do with like, for some reason, Nintendo enjoyers, I'm a Nintendo enjoyer. I don't mind the like performance dip necessarily, trading it off for the convenience of the portability. Obviously, because yes, I'm a gacha player. I play Honkai Star Rail. I play Zenless Zone Zero. Obviously, those run at 60 to 120 frames per second on my computer, but I do also play them on my phone at 30 frames a second because I don't care. Like, it's just not that super big a deal for me. Obviously, I play it a lot more on my new tablet because it can run at 60 on my new tablet. It runs really well on it. But if those things were on the Switch and only ran at 30, yes, I would play them on the Switch because it's not... I don't care about that like frame rate difference for the portability, but I know that I'm kind of in the minority of that. I do have a limit, like what's that for me? My Time at Portia, that ran abysmally on the Switch. It was unplayable for 90% of the game. I took it back and played it on the PC and it was way better. Like there's a limit if it's just like completely unplayable, but there is this like, because it's a portable handheld, I think a lot of people are willing to overlook a little bit of performance flag on
Yeah.
it. Obviously, yes, it would be fun to play Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at 60 frames a second, but for what it is, I'm the type of person that thinks it's very funny that when I do something, it drops the game to 3 frames a second. Like when I was playing Fantasian and I would do like big AoEs on like massive groups of enemies and it would drop to 5 frames a second, I thought that was very funny. And it's just like, oh, poor Switch. But I know there's people that are like, oh, why can't I do this massive explosion and why isn't it rendering its perfect 60 frames a second the whole time? It's just like, I just have fun, man. It's a video game. But I get that too. Like, there's a lot of compromise that comes with a console like a Switch. And
But a lot of what you were saying was for portability, which I
yeah,
assume is like portability outside of the house.
yeah.
Yeah, and what I used to use Switch for before Portal a lot was portability inside the house of just like a second screen playing on the couch if the TV was taken up or something.
hmm
And that's kind of where I feel like I don't use or won't use the Switch anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to look at a list of like what are like the best third-party games on the Switch because I was curious how many of them were like big games. Like Nier Automata is one of them. Kind of saying like big like open world games that would most likely be impacted by performance. Obviously, there's Monster Hunter like Rise and
Mm-hmm.
what have you, and No Man's Sky. But like, yeah, like even in like I said, because the resolution of the screen is so small in handheld mode, it's like the having it be that low resolution. Like there's on my phone because of my Verizon plan. It's like they if I watch a YouTube video at 480p on my phone, it looks fine, even though my iPhone's resolution is much bigger. It's like it's not going to look terrible. Like I can load it at like 720 or 1080 if I'm on like Wi-Fi, but even if I'm on like cellular, like it's not like, oh boy, this looks real bad. It's like it's so small, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And
And
it's
it's like
always going to have that. Of course, it's going to look better in docked. Like the ones that always come to mind when I think of something like that, like handheld versus docked, are like Harvestella and Fantasian. Obviously, when those are docked and I don't even play on the TV. I play on my computer monitors. My Switch is hooked up to my computer, and just like playing on my my much larger computer monitor, they look fantastic. Like Harvestella looks great. It's nice and crisp and clear. Fantasian looked amazing. You could see all the little details and stuff like that. But on handheld mode, they still looked fine.
Yeah, it's like if you can optimize well, because we've seen games, obviously even on PS4 and or PlayStation and Xbox consoles, like if they don't optimize them well enough, it's like then it just comes down to how good of a job can you do to make it fit on the console's limitations, and it's like some games do it really well, and so it really comes down to but obviously a lot of these studios that do them are the bigger studios, so that's why I'm curious about the small ones that aren't just making like a top-down 2D game or a mini RPG or something small, like actually doing a much bigger style game. But we'll see. Like I said,
game
obviously
that you wouldn't think would be on the Switch is
and they'll be curious to see what their lineup is in April because they'll probably talk about what's coming, what's down the line, first party and third party and what have you. So and how much will be like games that are currently out on Series and PS5 that they'll port over to Switch 2 and stuff like that maybe aren't that they didn't do for the Switch. Like, okay, now we can put these games on the Switch 2 or something. Like maybe we'll have those third-party exclusives that weren't available on the Switch. But anyways, got a couple months, and then they'll talk about it.
A couple months of listening to people make up shit and speculate. And it's like, just wait.
Yep, exactly.
I hate all of the like, here's what we know and don't know about the Switch 2 articles already. Like I'm already sick of all of them.
30 things we know. What games could be at launch? It's like, how about you just wait? We gotta get that click.
What game could be at launch? Literally every Switch game that's already out, most likely. Yeah. That's what's going to be available at launch. Maybe a couple Switch 2 launch titles. Like, calm down. Get a hobby.
Yep.
Play a different video game.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move into what we've been playing. We've been going kind of long because that Switch talk. I'm surprised I didn't realize it was going to be that big of a segment. We'll go ahead and start with Zaya. What have you been playing? You said in Discord something about what was it? You were trying to do something at work. Like you brought what was it? You trying to use a controller or something? I got to go back in the Discord chat. Where you were having trouble.
I was trying to So I have Honkai Star Rail on my tablet. Runs really well. Talked about that. I was trying to play it at work. I have a controller, an Xbox controller. For some reason, is like the only fucking thing that actually works well with Star Rail on Android. So I was playing that at work, but I was like, I need a more inconspicuous way to like store my tablet at the back of my computer and control it because it's very obvious that I'm hiding something under my desk when I'm using the controller. So I tried to use a mouse and keyboard so that I could just have my mouse like next to my work mouse and it would just look like I was working, but I'm playing Honkai Star Rail. But for some stupid fucking reason, the tablet registers the clicks on the mouse as obviously like a touch input for everything except moving the camera around. And I was like, why is this a thing? I figured out that in Dex mode on my tablet, if I run the game through Dex mode, it works with moving the camera around. But it only registers one input at a time. So I can't move the character and the camera. If I click to move the camera, the character stops running. I was like, this is so stupid. So I just went back to playing with the controller. No, funny. I was just trying to be sneaky and play video games at work without being noticed.
Yeah.
But other than that, I finished Astro Bot last night.
Oh, nice.
I haven't platinumed it. I didn't feel like doing the I don't know, like trial things or the extra galaxy that unlocked after you beat it. I did get pretty much everything that you can get in the main game, though. I did all of that and it was very fun. But I left that stuff. I was like, if I feel like playing just like a simple little fun platformer at some point, at least I have that I can go back to. But that's basically all I've been doing this week is kind of picking away at that, and then I finally finished it last night.
Astro Bot was such a fun game. That was such a like chill, pick up, finish, have fun, put down game, and like not stress about it.
Yes, it was so fun. I like the extra little or the little bonus world, I guess, at the end of each galaxy.
Yeah,
it's very, very fun getting to see like what it's going to be when you rescue the little bot, and it's like, oh, the next world's gonna be this, and it's very exciting.
Even if you don't do all of the like random side stuff in Astro Bot, I still feel like it was a really fun game. Like,
oh yeah,
you can do exactly as much of that game as you want and not feel like you really missed out. But I also appreciated that this is something we talked about like way back when, of whether it was a family game or not. There are levels in that are definitely more geared towards adults that are fun and that are more challenging. And then there are levels that are more geared towards kids. And I really like the game structure of like the levels that are geared towards adults are kind of hidden and they're near the end and you don't notice them right away. And the ones geared towards kids are more obvious. So it's like, it just works out well.
Yeah, it's a very good balance of like, I just want to chill right now. So I'm just going to do like the main stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm getting a little bit bored and it's getting a little repetitive. So I'm going to go to some of the more challenging side stuff right now. And when I get tired of that or when I get frustrated, I don't have to put the game down and go away. I can just go do something else in the game.
Yep.
What about you, Isli? What have you been playing?
I have been playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes still. And
did you finish it yet?
I did.
Okay, you did. I assumed you must have beaten it by now.
I was curious. That's why I was asking about you, because it's like I hadn't seen you play in a while, so I was trying not to comment on anything. But I did beat the story of Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I don't have all the trophies or 100% truth uncovered, but I beat the stories.
Okay. How long would you say?
I was going to say I can't comment on that until you give me some indication of where you're at.
Well, I was going to say, how long did you beat it? Like, did it take you to be like, what was your playtime? Do you know? Like, because I think I looked online, like, how long to beat before I was playing. I think it was like high teens, maybe. I'm surprised it's going on for as long as it has. Granted, I've only been playing it on stream, so it feels like it's going longer because I'm only doing like an hour and a half to maybe 2, depending on the night. So it stretches out a game.
In about 12 hours.
Okay.
I beat the story in about 12 hours, which again doesn't necessarily indicate that I beat all puzzles.
Right. Yeah. You obviously don't have to get 100%, but yeah, I was just curious because I was looking at I have let's see, trying to go through and see how long I've been playing it. Every stream's about 2 hours, and I have 8. Looks like I have 8 recordings for Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. So, actually, some of these are wrong because they were. The VODs. Anyways, but because I'm curious like how much, because I feel like okay, I must be getting close to the end, like where I'm at, puzzle wise. And so, anyways, but I know before when we first were starting it, like complaints we had were like, or not complaints, but like this thing was like, oh, it just felt like it was a little too easy. But I know you've also ran into some roadblocks. You don't have to get into specific puzzles. We can talk about it more in depth once I finished it. So make sure you keep
I'll
your notes
spoiler
ready.
the one puzzle that was a big roadblock for me because I know you beat it. But yeah, in general, I think I kind of maintain the same thoughts I had, which is that most of the puzzles I think were too easy. And then the puzzles that ended up being roadblocks for me, when I finally beat them or beat, the game, I never kind of went back and thought like, wow, those are really challenging puzzles. I see where, my logic was incorrect. I can't believe I missed it. Most of them were like, I don't know if I agree with that. Most of the puzzles that were roadblocks for me, I disagreed with the logic of the actual puzzle and found it to be a poorly designed puzzle. So the one that I mentioned to you was the piano puzzle. So spoilers for the piano puzzle for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I really dislike that puzzle because it has absolutely nothing to do with music notation or the notes that are written at all. That puzzle could have very easily been written in like any number of other ways. And it seems like the only reason they made it a piano is not for contextual clues, but just because they wanted to have that unlock scene where she plays the piano in the song. And that kind of just like drove me nuts that it has no tie or logic to like real life or music at all. And it's kind of like, well, then why the fuck did you put it on a like staff ledger lines and have it be a piano?
Yeah, I could see that being a problem because you're you've practiced piano,
Yeah.
so you know music. But and in context, like you said, every other puzzle is like, oh, here's Roman numerals. Here's this. How does it translate here? Like it fits. You know the answer. Usually, it's like figuring out how to input that answer is
Right.
where it's like, okay,
But like,
it's like, and that's the only one where if you are a music person, for me, it didn't take me that long to get on it, but I can understand because you have a background in music, you'd be like, this doesn't apply to music at all.
right. And like for real life, like the Roman numerals, for example, all the Roman numeral puzzles that are in the game correspond to real life. And if you knew Roman numerals prior to the game, like the back of your hand, you wouldn't need any of the supporting documentation in the game to necessarily solve it. There are like a handful of puzzles that you could just input and know. And there are a few other puzzles like that where it's like, yeah, they correspond to real life in the way that like if you already had this knowledge of, dates or lunar phases, things like that, you could probably solve some of this stuff without a ton of additional help from the game or without contextual clues from the game or without the books from the game. But the piano one specifically, I'm like, this is just like knowing how to play piano and knowing music notation. I look at that and I'm just like, this is just like, there's no correspondence to anything that's going on. And you could have done such an interesting puzzle there, but instead you just wanted to use the piano as a set piece. So that one really annoyed me. But then when I beat it as a roadblock, it wasn't like, I didn't have this moment where I went, oh man, that was such a like well-designed puzzle. I can't believe that like I missed that. Now that I know it makes so much sense and I'm really satisfied. When I beat it, I didn't get the satisfaction of a puzzle game. I just kind of like got annoyed at the puzzle itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for that one. Yeah, it's yeah, like I said, I didn't have any. I probably would have had longer stretches of frustration or thinking. I feel like there was a big difference between playing it if I played it off stream versus playing it on stream because I never spent like if I could never spend too long on a puzzle. Like unless I was trying something like what if I tried this? What if I tried this? Like as long as I was doing something, I never like sat there and just quietly contemplated like when I got to the piano, I'm like, okay, let's see. Okay, here, okay, I got the dates on there on the keys, yada yada. What do I do? I just kind of thought I did the thing from Ghostbusters, and then I was like, all right, I'm just gonna leave this later because I didn't want to sit there in silence trying to think it out on stream, but not doing it there and then coming back to it later because a lot of times I came across puzzles like the lock for me the lock had a the one on the third floor balcony or second floor had a scribble of like a girl in like red. I'm like, okay, well, I have to find the thing that tells me. And later when I found the piece that tells me the thing about it, like I gave it a second to like look at it. And then I kind of like read the paper. I'm like, okay. I went back and was like, I'm going to leave this for later. But every time I got to one of those, it was always later in the stream, like near the end when I was kind of like more tired. And anytime I stop those and then do them first thing in the next stream, it's like, then I get through it really quick because I like see it. And I feel like that was nice to not spend time because you can get in that kind of downward spiral of thinking where you start to take like that's why I had to move away from that clock early on, because I'm like, I gotta stop looking at this. I can tell this is years, and I can tell these are, the astrological signs or whatever. It's like I gotta stop looking at this because I know it's here, but clearly I don't have whatever I need to actually figure out the solving point. Or with the book and the moon phases, I'm like, I just gotta leave because clearly I don't have what I need to finish this yet. Like any sort of hint as a key. Like I can have the symbols, but I need like the cipher key to get there. So I'm like, I just need to step away. So I tried to never stay too long on a puzzle. And I think that was because I didn't want the stream to be boring and just sitting in silence. So that I try not to do that. But yeah, it is very like we talked about it before on Discord, but like it's very like escape room-esque with a lot of their puzzles. There's nothing like insane. Like that's why I'm so interested to hear people who aren't puzzle savvy on these podcasts and hear them talk about it, because they're like all about it, but I'm like, okay, but I know you aren't puzzle savvy, and I'm really interested to watch someone kind of like with Tunic isn't necessarily like this exactly, because that's not really puzzles. It's more like you're discovering. It's like discovery. But I want to like watch someone play it and be like, see, because again, it's very like,
I mean,
a lot of puzzles are easy.
I enjoyed the game. I think the escape room comment for you, what you're kind of trying to get at is like, it's an escape room in the sense that usually the solution is like not trying to figure something out per se, but knowing which book to look in, or like you're not trying to use logic generally. You're trying to find the answer in a note or book or behind a picture frame that you've already discovered. And it usually doesn't correspond at all to like thinking through a problem. And I think that's what I kind of have trouble with for it.
It's always like, for the most part, a lot of the puzzles, especially like any door lock puzzles or any other puzzles, like the answer's in the room. Like it's always there. That's why I like it's very much escape room. Aside from a couple of things like in the back patio, once you solve the 4 horse puzzles and you put all the things in, it's like then it unlocks that greenhouse. I forget what the hell they call it in the games, like orange, whatever. Anyways, it's like a greenhouse, but it's like, okay, that just unlocks another puzzle you have to come back to later. Or like when you get the key to the cemetery, and it's like, okay, well that's just another puzzle for later. Like there's nothing in, like it gives you the clues on the thing, but it's like you don't have the items to interact with the headstones yet. But so many of the puzzles are just like, the answer to solve this is in this room. And it's like, but it's all contextual. So it's like, again, going back to that Ace of Hearts, the poster's upside down. Well, the movie came out in this thing, so rotate it because that's upside down, or, this and that, yada, yada. So it's like, or the when I had trouble with the 4 Horsemen posters early on, I'm like, oh, it clearly uses these blocks before I found all the blocks. I was like, I just want to put the blocks in where they go. And I'm like, oh, well, this is, pestilence. Okay, this needs an E. So I tried the E. Then once I got the last block, I'm like, okay, well, clearly this block has to go into this poster here because it's the one letter I was missing. And I realized there that, oh, I need the J because the J looks like the font of the S to complete it. I was like, that made me realize, oh, the other puzzles, I had it down. I just need the blocks that look like the font. So it's like the E, I need the W in another font, rotate it, and that's the E. And I saw that, but that's because I didn't have all the components of that puzzle to realize, oh, this is what it was. Or like I was doing one last night where I was like, I'm like, okay, I cleared, every time I go to the stream, I was like, okay, where did I stop? We'll do that first thing. That will typically open up a couple things, yada, yada. And I near the end of the stream, I was like, let's go look at these bug report spots. Because all the things, I found the diorama, at one point, and I was like, I'll come back to this later. And I was like, okay, let's go look at the diorama. And I'm rotating around, and I'm like getting all the letters, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is the code for the bug report. Okay, let's go look at the other bug. Let's write down all the codes first. So I go to the other one, and it's like, okay, here's the 2-in-1 statues, and here's this, and 2-in-8, and all that stuff, and 3-2 lie. And I write them all out, and I go to the other one. I'm like, okay, this is the upside down numbers, and I write them all. I write them all down, and then going through, I'm like, okay, well like the one with the diorama, I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is the word it's saying. Like I tried it in the order of, it was like, I think for me, it was like E4, M2, Z1, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'll try put them in the order of the thing. I'm like, okay, it didn't work. I'm like, okay, well, clearly this spells maze. But they don't correspond to the 1, 2, 3, 4 next to them. So I'd like maze. It didn't work. And then I realized I I kept skipping past the it's case sensitive.
Yeah.
Because I like when I thought about because that was the thing where like the 4 statues, I was like, this reminds me of the sample code or the sample puzzle that I had trouble solving for the shortcut door, where it's like if Lorenzo equals 1215 and Renate equals 128 or whatever. It's like I couldn't understand that one. I'm like, oh, clearly this seems like, because not every sample puzzle in that book corresponds to a real puzzle in the hotel, but some of them do.
Well,
so it's like, okay, go ahead.
Don't they?
Not every single one. Like they always go to the door, but like I've never, like there's that one where the shortcut, it's prime numbers. Like that one took me a while to realize like, oh, it's just fucking prime. Or it's not prime, but it's your squares. And I'm like, why didn't I see this? I'm good at math. Why didn't I notice this? But like, they're not always like that. But that one was like, it seemed like it very much went to,
I think every puzzle is a shortcut.
Well, no, every puzzle's a shortcut, but not every puzzle is like, because they're all samples of puzzles you might find in. The idea is that these puzzles that could relate to something you might find elsewhere in the map, not just the shortcut doors, but like the piano or a lock somewhere. Like there'll be a similar style of puzzle to help you unlock that door. Like that's why they're samples. Like you can be like, you might come across stuff like this. Is the idea, but you don't always come across things like that. Like you don't come across the squares, but there's like ones with like a compass or whatever, or not compass, but like directions and whatnot. But they don't always relate one to one. Like that one where the number's squished and stretched. You don't come across another squished and stretched puzzle in the hotel. But some of the other ones you might come across something like that. So that's what I mean. Like they obviously open up the shortcuts, but they don't always translate to another puzzle within the hotel. But I was like, this one with the statues, I mean, it looks a lot like that sample, that shortcut code in there where it's like, hey, a letter equals a number. And I'm like, okay. And so I went back to it after I like had an ad break and I went to use the restroom. I was like, let's go back and look at this. And I was like, okay, well, if I solved the shortcut door, because I never did that door because it was the one I couldn't understand. I'm like, okay, let's redo this. Let's do the sample of the shortcut door code. And now let's try doing it with these things. This is clearly the people. So these numbers must mean letters for their name. And then I did that and I timed out, okay, it looks right. But again, because I wasn't doing cap locks, it was like, it didn't work. And I was like, why isn't it working? I was getting frustrated, but that was just because I wasn't doing cap locks. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it, even though it's fairly easy. It's still fun, and I'm surprised it's going on for so long. It is weird to get to a puzzle that you can't solve until later. Like you get to the center of a maze, and it's like, oh well, you don't have what you need to solve it. And then I'm like, okay. And then the other one where it's like it quizzes you, and you get through it like super quick if you haven't gotten to the other one in a while. And it's like, okay, now I get to a hard part where I need to know after midnight when did so and so show up, and I'm like, well, I haven't gotten there yet. So, but that's fun. And then since I did the bug reports, I did 2 bug reports. And so I went into the console and I was like, okay, let's go recreate this bug report. And it was the first bug report I did. And it's like, oh, when you talk, the bug is when you talk to the guy with the gun, if you stay on the dialogue for 30 seconds, it gets extra dialogue. And then the character freezes and bugs out. I'm like, okay, let's go do this one. Cause I knew where that game console was. And so I went to the game console, I did it, and I'm sitting there waiting for 30 seconds, and I'm like looking down, and I'm like looking at my phone, I'm like, all right, when's it gonna get there? And I don't know why, but for some reason when it jumped to Maserface, and then like it starts rapid fire saying stuff in red text, it jump scared me. And I don't know why, but it was like, I think it was just because like it was kind of loud, and it was quiet just sitting there waiting for 30 seconds. And then like I have it clipped, I haven't posted it, but that freaked me out. But then I had to go back into my video file and actually read what they were saying because it goes by on screen so fast. And now I have to go in and do all the other bug reports and see what they say, even though I feel like, okay, it's just going to be like, I'm curious how much of it is like when you go to the magic show and you pay money to go to do the disappearing woman and talk to the owl face character, the owl mask. It's like, it's just, okay, more lore about the beast and the third eye. It's like, okay, sure. But like that's stuff you've heard so many times. It's like I'm just hearing the story again. It's like how much of that is important versus just like it's lore versus like doing these bits here. Is it just increasing my truth percentage, or does it actually help me? And Like I'm trying to think where I'm at now. I'm like when I unlocked the door to the balcony, went downstairs, found the jail cell with like, for me it was the 6-digit lock, because I guess like some of the we realized, or you realized that, hey, your puzzle's different than mine. So I'm wondering like how many puzzles are different for other folks. Like I get down, it was like a 6-digit lock with characters.
I mean, I've been watching you play, and I would say that most of the puzzles are randomized.
Yeah.
Which I do think kind of makes it so that like the puzzles can't be quite as nicely designed if they're all randomized. Because then, like, while you have to solve it the same way, you can't have the same level of finesse. Like, you're not going to have contextual clues within the environment if the puzzle has to be randomized, right? Like, it has to be a written number somewhere that changes easily. It can't be like, you have to analyze the shadows cast by these objects on the wall or something. It has to be something simple, like the number is written in this letter and the letter changes.
Right. Yeah. They're all simple puzzles, right? So like your posters are different. So all you have to do is your answer is going to be the posters are, it's a different year. That's it. But it's like if it's this poster plus this poster, then you just do your poster, your release dates or whatever, or your poster's upside down. It's just your number upside down. So it's not like it's the puzzles are simple enough that you could just input anything. It's just the answer. It's still going to be the same process to get there. Like there's no crazy puzzles in that game where it's not like your maze is different or something. Right. Like it's going to be just so it's like they're so simple that you could easily change it out. It's just the logic is going to be, I can't just tell you like, oh, that door's 1940 or 1847 or whatever. It's like, no, it's going to be this one. It's going to be 1963 or something. But yeah, But yeah, like when I went down, it's like, okay, there's a door. It's like it's giving me every character of the alphabet. Okay, I was like 6 characters or whatever. But when I went and did it has a picture of a woman. I was like, oh, I forget this woman's name. I remember it, like I've seen it, but I just forget her name. But when I solved the statue puzzle for the bug report, I was like, oh, that's right. This is her name, because this is her bust in the room. And I'm like, and these are the other characters. I was like, okay. And then I went down and I punched it in, and that opened up the door and yada yada. But yeah, I was like, what is his name? The one thing I have like other things I need to think about, and I won't like discuss them here. I'll do them on stream. But like where I'm like, okay, I solved, like I did every year door. I'm like, okay, that's great. But how useful is this? Information has to be for something else, because you don't get anything for it except stories of the woman's life. And I'm like, okay, but I did talk to the old lady again. I'm just using those terms because I don't want to spoil anything about the story. And because I only ever talked to her like the first time you opened up that room. And then I talked to her again. I'm like, okay, well, I know who this is, but she says stuff. And I'm like, okay, is this useful? But I think when I was thinking about it, that's the fun thing, is like putting two separate pieces together. I'm like, because you can type things in the word. I'm like, okay, clearly this is a puzzle of some sort, because you can type in responses and get stuff backwards. So I need to go back, and that's something. It was like late, and I didn't want to keep going. Like I went too long because I figured out how to solve the bug reports last night, and I was like, I got to go to bed. But I got to go back and look at that, because my assumption is like, okay, everything I solved in those puzzle boxes will relate to whatever she's saying. Because stuff she said, I'm like, oh, some of this makes sense now, because now I remember reading or seeing these words in these stories. So I got to go back and do that. So that's like fun, where it's like, oh, if I get stuck on something or wonder about something, thinking about it overnight and then going back the next day fresh on stream just usually ends up solving it like right away. But I'm still like, how do I get into this goddamn coffee room? I'm like, when the hell do I get in there? Like, it feels like I'm playing Prince of Persia. I'm like, when the hell do I get double jump, man? Like, it comes so late in the game.
Somewhere, or am I just dumb?
How do I? And I'm sure like there was some way to use the coffee machines that I wasn't paying attention, because I never drink anything out of the coffee machines. So I'm like, I haven't been doing this. Is it? But the one mechanic I do like that's fun, that I think is a good one, is when Mazerface shows up and he's like, you have to do the memorization of the room. That is always fun to me, because like, you don't answer, you're gonna get shot, and then you got to go back to your save. Like, I like that. I like those.
Yeah, those are interesting to me, because it's so much like it's like nothing else in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's like nothing else in the game. So it's weird to me, because they got so not creative, I guess, but those are different than everything else, and they just don't seem to have applied that logic anywhere else. I don't know. I like the game. It just is a bit too simple.
Yeah. Yeah, but I had one where it's like they're like, what was in the trash can? And I was like, oh, I didn't look at the trash can. I just assume it's this. And it's like it was that. And I'm like, okay, good. But then it's like sometimes you get those memorization things. It's like, okay, it's a very simple room. Okay, this and this. And then I get one last night where it was like, oh my god, there's so much. There's like three scratches on the back of the reception desk. There's also an envelope underneath the desk. Okay, and then there's a key up on the hat rack, and there's a fez, and there's this, and he's holding up a couple fingers, and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, what was the name of the newspaper? And I was like, oh fuck, okay, I remember a UD. Okay, it's this one. And so it's like, trying to remember like multiple things and then getting the right answer. And it changes every time too. So if you fail and you go back, it's not the same question. But it's fun. I am enjoying it despite it. But again, I'd be curious to watch someone else play it, and then I can't wait to listen to the people that played it talk about it to see where they struggled. Or if they had similar, like, did they have any revelations? Like, oh man, when I realized this goes to here and this goes to there and blah blah blah. Like, I'm curious, but again, that it could be like, is it detrimental to have a lifetime of puzzle games in my, that I have done? Like, you know what I mean?
I do think it kind of is. I mean, I think that this game would have been not better, but I think that there's some level of like gamer logic that if you've played too many puzzle games, you kind of just know how everything is going to work out.
Yeah, that's why I like The Witness, because The Witness is like, okay, it's just get line from point A to point B, but it's like the way they change the rules for each set of puzzles, like, okay, there's a new twist on it now. Now you have to do this. Now the puzzle's, okay, how do I divide this in half? How do I make these symbols?
But that's why I was saying that I think The Witness works better, is because I think with The Witness,
right,
you have to solve puzzles based on logic.
The rules
like
that
you,
it set.
You're actually solving the puzzles based on logic. Whereas with this game, you're not solving the puzzles based on logic. You're kind of solving the puzzles based on looking around a room for a clue. And I do think there's a difference between those two of whether or not something is object based within the environment versus you actually solving things.
Like I said, it like, again, it's very escape room. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
clearly, and once they establish like year's important, it's like, okay, you're always looking for the year. You're always looking for something. When they red paint the answer for you in a letter, it's like, stop it. But so there, it's simplified versus like The Witness being much more like, all right.
And it's not a bad game. I just if I put like The Witness and Talos Principle would be like 9 or 10s out of 10s in terms of like puzzle games, not games overall maybe, but like those would be like really high up there as like extremely above average or like just really quality games. And this game would just be like, 7 or 8. Still good.
Like Viewfinder is really good, but it was because of my experience playing puzzle games. Like I could just sight read the solution really quick. So I got through it and there was only like one puzzle that tripped me up in that game, or two puzzles that tripped me up in that game overall, but it was easy, but I still enjoyed my time with it. Like I thought it was still really good. It was also short. I think it's like 4.5 hours or something like that. So it's like, that's like good. But if you're familiar with those kinds of games, you won't struggle necessarily to get through all of its puzzles. So, but yeah, it's a good time. And then I'm trying to see if did I take any notes here on Lorelei and the laser eyes. Oh man, I've recording it when I stream it so I can post it up on YouTube later, and I accidentally was looking at my OBS recording folder, and I always take a bunch of screenshots by mistake because I have screenshot for OBS set to middle mouse, and I still haven't changed it. So I go in that folder. It's like, oh, here's some screenshots. Let's go ahead and delete these. Yada yada. But I accidentally deleted like 5 VODs that I recorded, and I was like, oh my god! So I was like panicking, trying to find some, because it's like they're so big that when it was like, if you delete these, they're permanently deleted. And I was like, how do I recover? So I looked up like Recuva, like all these recovery programs, and they just didn't work. And I was so annoyed because like, great, now I can't post any of this to YouTube. And then I was like, I guess I could just use the Twitch VODs. So I just downloaded the Twitch VODs. I forgot about doing that. I was like, oh, I could just download Twitch VODs.
You just get like delete happy, and it's like, this is too big. And you're like, yeah. Don't warn me.
I don't know why.
Don't tell me.
I should have noticed, like, why did it warn me? If I'm deleting pictures aren't big. But yeah, it was like just sheer panic of like, great, that's like 5 days of recordings I just deleted, and I was so frustrated. But then I was like, the only thing about the VODs, again, I got to edit them. They're not quite the same bit rate, but it's like, it's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's not, you don't need high bit rate for this game, so it's gonna look just fine. But yeah, it's a fun game. I'm looking forward to keep playing it. Not sure what I'll play afterwards. I did buy Warhammer Rogue Trader when it was on sale the other week. It's like a tactics XCOM like style game, but in Warhammer. I gotta play that. And then Dark Tide's on sale now, and I'm like, damn, stop putting all these Warhammer games on sale. I was like, enough.
They know that you're in your Warhammer era.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we gotta tell you about it. You want to play this game? It's a good time. So, anyways, I don't know what the kids' brother's making them upset. But anyways, yeah. We'll go ahead and call it there, though. We've been going on for a while, and I got to do some grocery shopping as well. So, yeah, thank you all for tuning and listening. Thank you, Isli. Thank you, Zaya, for joining.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we'll see you all next time.
Later.
Bye.
Before I go,